are not back. Yep. Okay, great. Okay, so I hope you all had a good health break. And to those still eating, it's really good. Food is life. So now we'll work on understanding the state of women's and women with disabilities participation in leadership from the partners' perspective and the work that they're doing in the awesome focus countries. So for those that have a presentation, great. For those who don't have a presentation, that's also fine. You can talk about your situation as you already know it, and our able rapporteur will be taking notes. So the first organization will be FIDA. Can we get some tech help? Is our mainstream partner in Awesome, and they will be discussing their work in the context. They'll be telling us about the helpers, the barriers. They'll give us a few statistics and tell us about the political processes that they have been doing, what has worked well, what hasn't worked well, and as funders, is our funding working? Do we need to do better? All right, Janet, take it away.
Thank you so much. Good after tea, everyone. I hope we are all fine. I am still Janet. I'm making the presentation on behalf of FIDA-Kenya. And for us, it's just about sharing our experience in the awesome consortium and what we've been doing around mobilizing for women leaders. So we welcome you to interact with us. In case you have any questions, we shall be very glad to answer. Okay, so our presentation is structured in 4 parts. First, we'd like to just tell you what we do, some of the strategies we do as we engage with women and women with disabilities in leadership. So what has been our success? What are the gaps? And then what are the opportunities? Chrisabella warned me that I only have 15 minutes. I have a tendency of talking a lot. So that's a weakness, I don't know. All right, so in terms of the strategies that we employ as we engage with women and women with disability in leadership, the first thing that we've done under the Awesome engagement is that we've mobilized women rights organizations in a networking platform that allows us to interact with them in the whole country. So we have 8 regional platforms that we've created. Those of you from Kenya, you know about the provinces. So the former 8 provinces that we have, we interact with women rights organizations on 2 aspects. The aspects around sexual and gender-based violence, prevention and response, and then the aspect around women leadership. So we shall also just tell you how this engagement has really enhanced visibility of women in the regions. And then we really hosted a National Women's Conference. This was sometime in 2020. By that time, if you recall, it was almost in the height of COVID. And we were like, how do we sustain these conversations? How do we hold election institutions accountable? Because if you remember, there's a time a presidential election was nullified in this country. And one of the outcomes from that presidential ruling was that election is not an event, it's a process. So we really picked that as FIDA, and for us, it's very important that we sustain this conversation throughout the election cycle. Unfortunately for Kenya, we are always in the election cycle. I don't know if that happens in the other jurisdictions. People have been elected, they've not even settled, they're already campaigning for 27. So just to keep up with them, we also felt that it's very important to sustain that conversation at that level, and we hosted a very high-level conference that was also hosted regionally, even in the midst of all that. So we've done capacity building and mentorship for community-based organizations. So those of you who know, for FIDA, we only have 3 offices in this country: Kisumu, Mombasa, and Nairobi. But how we work is that we prioritize partnerships and create our visibility up to the community level. And the community-based organizations have been a very good platform for us to also interact at that level. So we had a leadership academy that included women with disabilities. 340 women were hosted countrywide. This is where we launched what we are calling a Vote a Dada campaign. So for those who don't understand, Vote a Dada is a Swahili, Dada is a Swahili name for a woman. So Vote a Dada is a rallying call for us to, oops, this will fall me down. Vote a Dada is a rallying call for us to vote for women in the many numbers. So the campaign was really a success in our opinion because we were able to really brand women candidates, and we'll tell you how. So of course we've been doing media campaign through both mainstream and social media. And for what has really worked for us is that we've been very intentional about incorporating sign language interpretation. So we realized that most of the time we would just put content out there without really having interpretation. But now we are very intentional to have like sign language interpreters in the content that we put out there, and also as we do our media campaign. And of course we are also shifting slowly from the mainstream TV, radio, to also get into the social media spaces. I know we've had a whole conversation how we can get into TikTok. I'm told people sleep at 2 a.m. just looking at TikTok. So we hope to do a lot of branding and visibility for women, and even just continue these conversations up to that level of TikTok. Yeah. So we've done community outreach program, particularly including and targeting persons with disability, and in this case, women with disability. So Elizabeth told me that we had a very successful activity with the Women Challenge to Challenge as we did the outreach. And we've also worked very well with the National Council on Persons with Disability as we do community mobilization. So I spoke about the radio talk shows and the webinars. For the webinar, I remember after elections, we had to do like a psychosocial support session for the women aspirants who had lost. You remember there was even a lady who sold all her property worth millions, right from nominations in Migori County. And she lost. So you can imagine how that took a toll on her. And that is just a story of one woman, and there are so many others who invest their life in campaigns and all, and they lose, and picking up their pieces from there becomes really a challenge. So we've engaged with KEWOPA. KEWOPA is Kenya Women Parliamentarians Association. I remember we had an engagement as early as this year, January, where FIDA supported 70 out of the 120 women that were there. And the conversation was, besides knowing your role for representation, oversight, legislation, how else can you engage to ensure gender responsiveness in that space that you occupy now that you successfully got elected? And we also work very closely with women caucuses. So women caucuses are mostly constituted in the county assemblies. They are the equivalent of KEWOPA in that space. So we've been very intentional about induction for them, and they've really knocked our doors. We get really constrained by resources. We'll talk to AWESOME to see how best we can support them. So we've done identification and training of male champions. So for us, it's just about them being allies to this campaign, and supporting us to craft measures for prevention and response to sexual and gender-based violence, as well as sustaining these conversations around women leadership. So I talked about duty bearers, and for us, from the learning from 2017, it was very critical that we engage what we are calling the duty bearers during the election period. So we've had conversations with IEBC, with political parties, dispute resolution tribunals, with even political party formations in their different political parties, to just be able to promote this gender responsiveness and gender inclusion. So meeting sexual and gender-based violence reporting networks for me was very critical because from our gender audit in 2017, women were saying that they are shying away from participating in political processes because of the fear of sexual and gender-based violence. So as a matter of response, we felt that it's very critical to engage this, what we call the reporting networks, not only to monitor the cases, but also in terms of early warning, just preparation. How can we then be able to support? What is the National Commission on Integration and Cohesion looking at when it comes to hate speech? Because now in 2022, when we did the election, sexual and gender-based violence, it was really coming out that the most prominent form of violence was hate speech and online violence. So in terms of access, enhancing access to justice, we've always been very positive to offer legal aid support, psychosocial support, group therapy, legal representation for women. And in the 2022, we started legal representation right from the political party structure to the political parties dispute resolution tribunal, now to courts. So that worked well for us. We've also been doing a lot of policy and legislative analysis. Right now, as you will see, FIDA is privileged to have been selected to be among the committee that is supposed to unlock this formula for 2/3 finally. And my colleague Michelle, who will join us later, is part of that team. They meet, she tells me they meet every Monday because this has to work. Yeah, so in terms of policy analysis, we also work very closely with counties and county assemblies and both executive to ensure that legislation on 2/3 and SGBV are in place. Okay, so among the successes, I've mentioned some in the strategies. We are privileged to have hosted a leadership conference that then began conversations with duty bearers. And I remember Jane was there in the panel. It was online. I could see her live from Kisumu. Yeah, and it was very critical for us to just be part and parcel of that conversation. And even the duty bearers who showed up, we were really humbled to be able to engage at that level. So from Voter Data, we said that we got 7 governors, 4 of which were directly beneficiaries of our Women Leadership Academy, so we are proud of them. The 3 senators and also the 29 MPs are the total number, and most of them were also there for our academy. So, yeah, I've talked about that. Then branding the candidates and creating a platform for engagement. We really had a lot of community engagement with the women aspirants, especially now at the county level. We would literally invite them for our activities as we implement in the community level. We would go with them to the radio talk shows and just give them a platform to sort of just tell the community their dream and their vision for them and also allow for feedback. And we also set up some what we like to call branding materials for them. So the election sexual and gender-based violence monitoring for us was also a success because we had 2 people per county, so that was 94, but we had to top up to 100 to include persons with disability, minority groups, and all that. They are the ones who were then giving us reports that we fed into what we are calling our situation room. So during the elections period, we had a whole situation room manned by our very own Christabella, our M&D, that they were able to flag out instances of violence, and we are able to respond immediately. If not within FIDA, then we will therefore escalate and ensure the women are helped. So FIDA-Kenya is privileged to chair what we call the Election Observers Group. Our ED, Annie Reri, is the chair of that platform. So for us, we were present during the election cycle, and we ensured that we are able to give feedback to the various duty bearers at all levels, and even towards the end and even after elections. Yeah. So what we consider as gaps, we feel that there is still weakness in the women's movement that is perpetuated by patriarchy, the mentorship gaps that I had made reference to before, and the issues around documentation. So we are still not confident that we've reached a level where we are really documenting women's experiences, and as we rally people to vote a data, why, So we need to document that and be very loud about it. We feel that there's still lack of inclusion for all women. Article 100 talks about the marginalized groups, women, youths, persons with disability, the minority communities and all that. So there's still a lot of gap in terms of inclusion. When we talk about women with disabilities, the issue around multiple discrimination is still very outstanding, and we need to address that conclusively. We feel that media still reinforces stereotypes that portray women leaders negatively. Yeah, I don't even want to belabor that point. We are still having a lot of conversation with media, breakfast meeting with editors, all that. We will not tire, yeah. So sufficient induction. I've told you any MCA, MP, you meet them, ask them, so what is your role? They know the 3 roles: representation, oversight, legislation. But what else, yeah? Gender responsiveness, gender mainstreaming. How can you legislate better for the kind of community that you represent? So even for the nominated MCAs, most of them will tell you, I was nominated by my political party based on the kind of work I've been doing there. So they don't really understand what extra mile they need to take and how that platform is very important for them to be able to brand themselves so that next time when they're campaigning for elective, they really have an easy time. Yeah, so 27 counties lack person with disability representation. It's very unfortunate. And yet Article 100, Article 27 in our constitution talks about the inclusion and all that. So of course the issues around resources, I will not even belabor. That is still very loud. And the lack of reintegration plan for political leaders. So remember, I've said there, they resign to vie. So you've lost your job, you've lost an election, you've lost your house probably, or all your investment, then what, So we need to see how best to support them. We feel that there's still a lot of discrimination and lack of inclusion in political parties. Of course, for Kenya, we have the option of going for independent candidature, but very few people explore that option. I think there's a lot of comfort in people identifying with political parties. So for me, I always believe that's where the work starts. Right from the way they constitute themselves, how their constitution stipulates gender inclusion and involvement and all that. So we need to really see how we can work more with political parties to ensure they are more responsive. So, yes? 17 counties. Oh, sorry. Thank you for that. I'll correct. Thank you so much. So the legislation on implementation of the 2/3 is still pending. I know FIDA also filed a case in court on how best we can be able to achieve this, and that's how we were told to go and negotiate out of court and come back with a working formula. So we are glad that the president has really taken this up. So on the opportunities that we are seeing, Kenya has a very progressive constitution. I've heard Ethiopia saying that in their constitution there's nothing about women leadership. People just vote for women because they want. Wow. In Kenya, we have a whole provision that says we are not going to discriminate anyone. We are going to be equal. We are going to give 2/3 gender representation. And Liz said 2/3, I don't know, I hear some people saying they are third. It's not women, it's gender, yeah? Then 81 also is so, 81B is so loud about a principle of the electoral process, 2/3. 175 is for the counties. They are saying not more than 2/3 should be of the same gender in elective or appointive. 197, the same. So we have an opportunity to enact legislation that upholds inclusion because our constitution has really been loud about that. So for us as FIDA, we feel that we have an opportunity at the 2/3 committee right now to ensure that this legislation on 2/3 is actually passed, a formula is actually reached, so that we are at least sure that we don't have to really engage in this conversation again. It's pen and paper and we have to comply. So engagement with county assemblies, women caucuses and the KEWOPA, for us that's still a very ripe platform to engage, to ensure inclusion in all the other provisions for Article 100. And you mentioned about the political parties. And also now, we are hoping to conduct a gender audit for the 2022 elections. so that we are able to document women's experiences. For me, this is very critical because most of our programming post-2017 was informed by the gender audit we did for the 2017 election. For instance, I will mention two things. Women were saying that they are not comfortable with us engaging them in boardrooms just when their male counterparts are contesting out there is when we are holding all these seminars. They were saying, okay, fine, you guys find a way to sustain this conversation around the 5 years, and also please just brand us. Then secondly, we need representation right from the political parties, because that's where we start getting shortchanged. From nomination, your name is on the gazette, tomorrow it's not there. So we were very keen to ensure we work with duty bearers and also to ensure legal representation for them. Yeah, so we suggest that we have an opportunity to do intergenerational mentorship through the Women Leadership Academy. Yeah, because there's all this cry about the broken, can I say transfer of experience? Or I don't know. Because there's all this older class of women leaders who have not been very intentional to mentor younger or upcoming leaders. So we have an opportunity to do that through our academy. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Okay. So I wanted to know, like, what form the request take, brand us how, and then is this something that donors are agreeing to? Just because I always know in all the contracts there's a clause about, like, no, but if it's an ask, then I think we should take it forward.
Your mic is there. This is mine. All right. So thank you, Maureen. And that's been a challenge. I was very intentional not to talk about resourcing, because most of them will ask you, please fund our campaigns, and that is not possible. It's not even sustainable from the conversations we've had with donors. So the conversation now has been, how then do we give them platforms? You know, so as I had an experience from Uganda that it's very costly to go on the mainstream media. It's very costly. But of course, we normally have privilege in terms of how we even interact with the media, such that at times they can give us free airspace, for example, or even if we have to pay, then it's important that we carry along the women that we've mentored, and we are sure these ones are out there, they want to sell themselves. So how do you then give them a platform? How do you speak to donors to then create that platform for us, you know, to be able to engage and have them also engage with the people who will vote for them? But I know Christabella sits in the knowledge and management team. They have their strategies also for branding. She can add something.
Thanks, FIDA. If there are no other questions for FIDA, I will call up WCC. Maybe there are potential questions for FIDA that are brewing in your mind, so keep them open. We will have a question session at the end. Jacqueline, are you ready? He sets up as just a Kenyan, not as a worker for Womankind. I have a question for FIDA. FIDA representative mentioned that the government of Kenya is not bloated. I would like FIDA to respond. I really think it is. We have too many representatives. We're really dying under the tax burden and the never-ending recurrent expenditure burden.
Thank you, Maureen. We We actually support that the parliament is very bloated, but for us it's more on the call for inclusion, you know, Article 100. That's all we are saying, that it's if we decide to adopt the current numbers, please let's just have it included. Let's have it inclusive, yeah? And if we have to reduce, we are still maintaining the inclusion. That's just our call, that let's have it included, because we have seen that inclusion brings diversity, embraces different opinions, you know, allows for more innovation. If we don't have the youth, how will we innovate around technology, you know? So it's not really about keep adding the women. In fact, we say from 2010, the affirmative action thing is almost getting over. So what will happen, yeah? So what is it that has made us not been able to really achieve the inclusion? That's what we need to think about more. But Liz here is our technical advisor on inclusion.
Thank you, Janet. It's true. If you were just to look at the number, you would say the numbers are big. But for as long as these numbers do not speak to Article 100, we don't have the youth, we don't have the persons with disabilities, we do not have the marginalized, we don't have people from ethnic minorities, then even if you reduce the number, you lose that element of inclusivity, which, I mean, has taken... It's actually, we began seeing elements and successes of inclusion in the advent of the new constitution. It gives us a really strong platform that we can anchor these aspects of inclusion on. If we didn't have the new constitution, I believe that is an item that we would still be struggling. We've made strides, but we are not yet there. So even as we the numbers debate versus the money debate will always be there, but then we must safeguard the gains that we have made, more so around the area of inclusion. Thank you.
Just to add on what Elizabeth is saying, we have seen from the presentation by Janet that 17 counties really did not nominate any single person with a disability. And even when it comes to gender top-up, women with disabilities are never seen as fully women who can be in the list of gender top-up, even when they have applied. So really, for us, number, as much as we say maybe the taxpayer is being overworked, and yet we don't see our number, we are not very visible, we cannot say we are bloated, as people who are called marginalized even by the Constitution.
Thank you for that answer. How are we doing on the setup? And FIDA, thank you for bringing up the topic of wellness within women's political participation. I had never thought about it, but when you mentioned it, I was like, is this something that we should be funding? Because yes, like both the staff that are doing it, but also the women who are participating in a very adversarial and adverse environment. Jackie?
Thank you. My name is Jackie, again. Women Challenge to Challenge. I only have five slides, and I talk very fast. So, yeah, so I'll get on. Women Challenge to Challenge. We work with women and girls with disability. And for AWESOME project, we were targeting 20 counties. Again, we had interventions on sexual and gender-based violence and also women participation in leadership. But we'll focus mainly on women with disabilities participation in leadership in the AWESOME project. So I'll start with the challenges that we face, and not only in this project, but also even in our work, continuous work with women and girls with disabilities. We know that women with disabilities are significant individuals, and mostly they are overlooked by most members of the society. And even in our work, we observe that most of the time they are forgotten. Like you can go to a place or even interventions in institutions, people will talk about the different segments, talk about women in general, we'll talk about youth, we'll talk about men, but then we forget about women and girls with disabilities, whose issues really are very specific and very special, relating to only them. So, and they are a very small percentage in leadership spaces. And even before, as we began this project, one main challenge we faced is getting proper data or adequate data on women with disabilities participation in leadership spaces. So, but for us, we wanted to improve on that and have our own data, but just to know, even as we talked to bodies like IBC, talking about organizations that work on issues of elections, they could really not give us adequate data. So it was for us to even speak to people on the ground to know, and again to know how women with disabilities are participating and how many they are. And again, another challenge is discrimination. Because of the stereotypes, what maybe people will think about not only women, but women with disabilities, and thinking, maybe having that perception that they can really not bring so much on the table, and yet they are able to bring something on the table. They are talented in their own ways, they have good ideas in their own ways, and they can bring something on the table. So we have stereotypes, we have attitudes, and also cultural beliefs, which leads to isolation and exclusion of the women and girls with disability. And maybe to mention one particular experience in one of the counties, I think it was in Baringo. A woman with disability talked about cultural beliefs, and I know this is everywhere, but we got this in Baringo, where a woman said that when she was vying for a seat, just because she was divorced, she was separated by her husband, that was one of the things that really put her aside. It worked against her being divorced. And in another county, I can't remember the particular county, there's a woman who lost a seat, not in the previous election, but in 2017. She lost a seat because of, again, the politics around her disability and issues of women. So when they went to court, if I can remember the story very well, when they went to court, someone else came to defend, someone else wanted that seat. She didn't have a disability. So it was that woman who didn't have a disability against this other one who had a disability. So the other woman argued that her disability is that she has gone through FGM. So she called that a disability. And she was able to prove her case, and just the politics around that, she was taken as a representative of persons with disability just because she said that she went through FGM, and that is disability. Yeah, so those are some of the things that we hear on the ground. Other challenges, issues of intersectionality and GBV, discrimination on the basis of their gender, ethnicity, and disability. We also have restrictions when it comes to social, economic, and political contribution in their families, community, and nations because of their difference, which is always equated to their inability. Like if, because of their inability, their disability, they cannot take part in politics. There is also limited access to resources, both finances and human resource. And just to echo what FIDA has said, we, even us as WCC, we didn't want to bring the issue, we didn't want to sound like we are able to fund some of the campaigns. So we generally supported them so much on media visibility. I'll talk about that later. And we also have challenges on accessibility, inaccessible venues, campaigns, elections, and communication barriers, and also minimal support from the society. This comes as a challenge, but again, we look at it in another way when it comes to our successes, because of the perceptions and the attitudes of the society. And then again, low self-esteem from the women with disabilities. Over time, we have seen how they struggle with low self-esteem, especially when it comes to disability, and feeling like they cannot add any value. There's also perception that women with disabilities only take up the persons with disability seats. Like someone mentioned, like women, we are told to only go for the women rep seats, even for women with disabilities or persons with disabilities. Again, you find that people will tell the persons with disabilities, you can go for the nominated seats. You just wait for your time to come. You really don't have to struggle here or going through the election process. Just wait for your seats. I hope we are together. So our awesome journey, of course that was the awesome journey, but now going to what really we have been doing. We have reached more than 800 women with disabilities since the beginning of the project through awareness raising and civic education. And we took advantage of the first 2 years just to do our own civic education to the women with disabilities, educate them about the election process, about the voting process. We brought them together, and we also connected them with bodies like IEBC, just to let them know how the process goes, and also talk to them about their rights and also how they can be self-advocates. Yeah, and at this point again, we wanted to encourage the women to come out to take up these seats through this civic education and awareness raising. So from that, we were able to identify 20 women with disabilities, and with them by then we brought them together with those who were in political spaces then, just for mentorship purposes and for them to share their experiences and even try to mentor, however basic it was, try to give them ideas of what goes on when it comes to the election process and vying for these seats. So again, what we did, in the beginning of this year, we did a small survey with 10 counties, but we'll be able to get a clear picture even next year because we'll be reaching the other 10 counties. But from these 10 counties, we reached 72 women with disabilities through focus group discussions. And again, just to mention, when we talk about women with disabilities, we work with all types of disability. We work with persons with albinism, we work with women who are deaf, we work with those who have physical disabilities, and also guardians. So, yeah. So from the survey, we reached 72 women from 10 counties, and we had a question on voting to know how many participated, how many voted, and we had 86% who said they voted. So the points that I've put in red, those are some of the reasons that we got from those who didn't participate in the voting process. So one of them was voter apathy. Sorry. Voter apathy. Then there was inaccessibility. Thank you. So voter apathy and accessibility in voting stations and lack of national IDs. The successes, from the findings, we saw that the project interventions that we have been doing in the AWESOME project have had significant impact on the ground. And again, another success is working with the media, as I mentioned earlier, to increase visibility of those vying. We organized a press conference and radio talk shows, and I know, as some have mentioned, that working with the media might be really expensive, but we took advantage of the relationships we have developed over time with the media houses to be able to bring on board those who are vying. So yeah, and support again from the society. As I said, we look at it from the point of being a challenge and again as a success. Because for these 20 women, we had 20 women going for those seats. We had a woman rep, we had members of county assembly, vying for members of county assembly seat. And though they didn't get those seats, they didn't win those seats, but for us, we see it as a plus because it means that the society is supporting, to a certain extent, coming out to vote for the women with disability. So we see it as a support. And we also consider it a success when it comes to Kenya Women Parliamentary Association. We have been able to convene meetings with KEWOPA and the commitment that we are seeing from them to help in mentorship, mentoring those who are interested in vying. And as I mentioned earlier, I think for us it is important for these processes to start early because most of the times we start hurrying up even when the donor funding has come. It comes a bit late, but I think with whatever resources we have and whichever way we can begin these processes early so that by the time even the funding comes and we are starting the election process, we are somewhere with these women with disabilities. And other than voting, women with disabilities have participated as polling clerks, returning officers, and campaigners. And I think this is very important because some of the things that those interested in politics are not told, one of the things they are not aware of is that you cannot just come, especially in Kenya, just you wake up one day and you feel like, I want to vie for this seat. Then you start maybe a month or 2 months before and expecting that you will get elected. So I think we encourage them to start this process early and to take part in these other spaces. Be campaigners, volunteer to give maybe the brochures of other political leaders where you're affiliated to so that you're able to increase your visibility. And again, encouraging them, if there's something you can do in the grassroots, because as you see in Kenya, for me, I see the trend, people are coming out of the norm of just voting for anyone. They really want to see what you've been able to do for some time and how you've been able to engage people for some time right from the grassroots, not just talking up here, but reaching out to those people on the ground and building your portfolio, your visibility. So we are encouraging them to be doing something, to be vocal on issues of disability and even in general other issues that do not necessarily touch on disability, just generally be vocal about those things, engage at the community level so that it will be easier when you're coming now to take up these seats. I think my presentation ended there. Thank you very much. But I welcome Jane to add anything that I might have left out.
I just wanted to emphasize on the point that Jackie says, when we have now slots for persons with disabilities at all levels, either at county assembly or national assembly, and where now, is it Ethiopia, Uganda, they say that women will always be told when they want to vie, wait for you, go to your spaces that we have already set aside positions for women representatives. So that is where you belong. So even here in Kenya, women without disability will always tell you, go to the slots of persons with disabilities. So which means they have not really come to see us as equal. We are still lesser them. There's something that we are not fully to do, maybe, and that really is a problem. So I don't know whether FIDA, when you are doing your trainings into the women rights organizations, how we could amplify the voices of women with disabilities into those spaces so that they are seen as equal partners as women. It's only that we are women first, but our needs to be represented by us. Thank you.
Thank you, Jane. Any questions for WCC?
Hi, everyone. Actually, my comment stems from my experience at the Political Parties Peace Tribunal during the 2017 party nominations. And of course, that was a time when PPDT is, to a great extent, is still centralized in Nairobi. So probably this is just but a clarion call on FIDA and the like-minded parties that I think as a way of also engaging with these institutions, it could also be interesting to find out, to ask, for example, PPDT. So what are the strategies you have in place to foster accessibility of your services? You see, yes, there's the Political Parties Act that establishes it and all that kind of thing. But you see now, at I will call it at a more administrative level, like what sort of mechanisms have you put in place to enhance access of your services as PPDT to persons with disabilities? You get that kind of thing. You know, that would rather be a more proactive way of looking at it. Now, in addition to that, something I will also want to add, which of course now I also learned, it is very, especially with regard to party primaries. You know, a lot of these things happen during the party nomination process. Because you see, if that train leaves you, then basically there isn't much you can do, even as an independent candidate. Now that's based on my experience. So I realized that of all the documents that people look at, people don't look at the IBC's timetable. IBC's timetable is very, very important, especially when you're doing the training for this kind of thing. Because you see, IBC's timetable, if you look at the IBC's timetable in 2017 and IBC's timetable in 2022, they're so different, and shockingly enough, it has got an impact on even how the law works. IBC timetable, by the way. So it is important as you do the training, or as we talk about fostering women leadership and that kind of thing, we must also now also prepare them on their various stages and what needs to accomplish at what time and how fast that should be done. So as to avoid what is called last minute rush. Yeah, that would be my addition. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that was an important addition. I have a question for WCC. So you said there were many data gaps. Have you tried to, what are the steps you're taking towards addressing the data gaps? Because I know the data gaps are in government bodies. So the census, was the census that was produced just recently, is it accurate, is it inaccurate? Like how does it respond to the needs of persons with disabilities?
Yeah, the issue of data is really critical. And it has a lot of confusion when it comes to persons with disabilities, or rather women with disabilities. The census 2019 gave a lesser number of persons with disabilities compared to census that it was a survey kind of, but national survey 2007 that was done by the same government. And with the we lost when they used the Washington set of questions, which is very good to use. But again, the way it was administered, people with disabilities did not understand. Like when you asked, do you have difficulties in walking? Of course, I'll say no. In climbing stairs, then you start struggling. In Kenya, we don't have many buildings that are not, that do not have stairs. Majority do not have lifts or ramps. So I will climb the stairs anyway. So really, you don't know what to say at that point. When you ask, do you have difficulties in seeing? Even when with glasses, I think people are getting confused. There was only one question that was very specific for those who are albinism. It was obvious, do you have albinism? And so the answer was yes, if you have albinism. So it gave us 2.2%, whereas we look at the data of IBC, they say the people who are registered, people with disabilities, were 1.5 registered voters with disabilities. Yet the national census is giving us about lesser than 1 million. So, but what is happening is that Kenya National Bureau of Statistics have promised to do a separate survey or data collection on persons with disabilities. So we are really working hard to ensure that that happens. But they're still saying there is no money. I don't know when money will come from.
Yeah, I think that's an important question to address, because the government does a lot of its work on data, and if the data is wrong, then it doesn't work. So I'll move us on to the next partner. Our next partner is EWDNA, and Dibabe will be making the presentation for EWDNA.
Salam no? Karibu. Okay. Okay. My explanation is divided into 3. The first one is the historical process of women's participation in politics and women with disability. The second one is in the peace process, and the third one is awesome journey. When most of the explanations was already mentioned in the morning about the political participations of women in general in Africa, but it is the same. Historically, women are less represented in political participation in our continent. When we are talking about women with disability, it is 0. Even if there is no registered data, but as we know all in history and in our life, there is no women with disability politically assigned or represent women with disability. Because there is a lot of challenge. Gender by itself, it is a difficult, or it is a problematic. when we are women plus disability, it is a double challenge or double discrimination because of the societal attitude or the negative attitude of the society toward this gender in general and women with disability in specifically. Because, disability by itself, sometimes it's considered as a curse or a sin from a God. It is a punishment for the family. So this kind of negative derogatory words discriminate limited the participations of women with disability in accessing to education, accessing to health facility, accessing to employment opportunity. Currently, the Ethiopian parliament is 41.9% is women, but there is no women with disability assigned politically in our big parliament. I will come into the challenges in the later. So there is a change. Yesterday is better than today, as I said earlier, but still it is a need. Globally, from when we compare with globe, it is better because globally the participation of women is 25.5. So in Ethiopia it is 41.9 something. So when we look at the principles of 50-50 plus, it was missed. Still, it will need a progress and doing the best thing. When I come to the peace process, the peace process, even in the national action of Women for Peace, said that 50-50 war, it is encouraged the main objectives of this action, national action for peace, women and security is the participation of women. It highly appreciated the participation of women in the peace, because if this world is led by women, there is no war in the world, trust me, because women have a strategy to lead the country, the home, and everything. So, but this world was led by patriarchal system. Always there is no peace everywhere, because they're fighting each other. But women suffer a lot for this fighting or for this problem. The first vulnerable group was women and women with disability. So in this national action for peace, it said that 30% of women were represented, but there is no figure, or it is the participation of women with disability was underrepresented. When we are looking at the cessation of hostility between the Tigrayan government and the Ethiopian federal government, who knows? There is no one lady. There is no, because the conflict was created by men, and the peace process is also led by men and finished by themselves. So what we do as women rights organizations, in collaboration with other women rights organizations, we were submitted or provided by calling a media, we provided a position statement or a statement, because the war was led by men, and there is no participations of women in the cessations of hostility. But the most vulnerable or affected is the women, and women with disability paid a lot in our past northern part of the conflict. Still the conflict continued, but still women paid a lot for peace. So what we do as Ethiopian, as women rights organizations, including EWDNA, we were collecting a few women rights organizations together, and were meet in Pretoria, and was established a Ethiopian Women for Peace. That what we do, the Ethiopian Women for Peace group, EWDNA, me myself, I'm one of the members of this foundation, because the cessation of hostility missed women's participation. So we tried to organize themselves for even for follow up the implementations of this peace agreement, because as women with disability was the most affected in northern conflict, so they missed a lot of things. So during the restoration and recovery and rehabilitation, we have to follow the implementations or the monitoring on the inclusion of women with disability. So we submitted our position statement by including even the issue of women with disability for Mrs. Ponzulu, because she is one of the member of Tigrayan and Federal Ethiopian government peace agreement, peace process. So peace is everything for our country. The next one is for implementing the current hot issue in our country is having an inclusive national dialogue. Even this inclusive national dialogue missed the participations of women. We have 11 commissioners, but 3 women only participated in as a commissioner in that big commission. So what we do, as we know, after the engagement of AWESOME project, EWDNA strongly work with women rights organizations, with elected women and women's caucus in parliament, and with Addis Ababa City Council. So what we do, we established a coalition. That coalition have more than 54 members of women rights organizations. So from 54 women rights organizations, we were selected 8 executive committees. So EWDNA was one of the member of this executive committee. What we do, we follow and we strongly doing the participations of women in our inclusive national dialogue, because this inclusive national dialogue conduct a consultation in each of the branches, in each of the regions throughout Ethiopia. So we ensuring the inclusion of women with disability. So because of the engagement of AWESOME and EWDNA, because we creating a big advocacy with these women rights organizations, and no one or no women rights organizations forget about the participations of EWDNA and the inclusion of EWDNA. So what we do, we ensuring the inclusion of women with disability in the tool of, in the process of inclusive national dialogue consultation. So from the participants, from the total participants in one consultation, 6% must be women with disability for agenda giving or during agenda collecting process. So this is the big achievement of AWESOME project. Regarding the political participation, as I mentioned, EWDNA strongly work with women rights organization, with elected women, with parliamentarians, with caucus group in the parliament, with elected women in Sidama Awasa. So what I heard the good news is even, you know, these elected women doing with in economic empowerment, in what they add in their bylaws from the, for example, when they grouping IJ group having a 30% or 50 members. So from this total participants, 5% is assigned for women with disability as a quota. This is a big achievement for EWDNA. Even after conducting advocacy programs with political parties, with different political parties, one of our political party, political party is highly competent with the current government, and also have a seat in the parliament. So they revised their bylaws, because of the it includes in their bylaws the participations of persons with disability and women with disability. Even one amazing thing, if one disabled person and the other non-disabled person is competing for a leadership position, the disabled one has 3% plus from that non-disabled person. So this is even this bylaw, this kind of affirmative action is not implemented in prosperity or in the current governing our government. So this is a good initiative and a big achievement for EWDNA after the engagement of AWESOME project. The other thing is 21 members of EWDNA in each project, in our project site, were a member of different political parties. So this is also one big achievement, and specifically in Gondar, 5 members with disability are members. After the engagement and the advocacy of EWDNA with the support of AWESOME project, 5 members were the member of sub-city council. Because in our structure, there is a highest body, the parliament, then the city, each city has its own city council. So 5 members were a Gondar city council. So the other thing is, as we know, we have a good practice, or the only EWDNA is the only association having a monthly and weekly coffee sessions. So today our members tried setting an agenda for talking about the political participation. Even they are trying to ready for the 7th Ethiopian election. So our members in our coffee sessions after the advocacy or the empowerment of AWESOME project, they tried to talk about the political participation in the election. Even because we, as I told in the morning, in our 6th election, EWDNA working with Ethiopian Women's Association, teaching our members as voters in civic education. So many women with disability were participating in as a electorate in our 6th election. So this is because our history is short, because we are we have a restricted law before from 2009 till 2018. So, but from starting from 2021, that is the time of AWESOME project ongoing now. We are trying to work a lot of things. Regarding the data, there is no any data, but as we tried to work on data in the hours past for the census. You know, we're trying to work on this for the Ethiopian census, but still the census will postpone. We don't know the exact date. That date will only known by the government. By the government. So GBV case is currently reported to EWDNA. Even the family of intellectual disability after creating family awareness with the support of AWESOME project, now the families of intellectual disability trying to report a GBV case to the associations, because we created a lot of awareness. Even our GBV documentary was conducted in 2022, so it was launched with the presence of parliamentarians, women, gender for women caucus, and with social standing committee. So all in all, it is short, but more of our presentation success and achievements will present in Fridays in our presentation. Sorry, I couldn't have a braille for today. Maybe if I missed anything, my colleagues will add. Visit or cafe. Thank you very much.
Any questions for UDNA?
Thank you for that presentation. I think one thing that I've noted that is very interesting is the incentives, is the bylaw that were developed by the political parties to give incentive to the persons with disability who vie for the seats. That's very interesting. Maybe I would like to know what are the incentives? How does it look like?
Initiated by the government, not only for the participations of women with disability. You know, a party is having 30% or more women and women with disability in his members. The government give a high fund during election.
Further questions for UDNA?
Thank you, Dibabe, for that presentation. I don't know whether it is me who did not understand, so I'm seeking clarification, please, or an answer. Or when you talked about peace and peace building, you said something like women paid a lot for peace. Is it? I just did not understand what that meant, or maybe you didn't say that. You got it wrong.
Okay, yes, I said women paid a lot for peace. I wanted to mention about the vulnerability of women during peace, during conflict, because if there is a conflict, there is a gender-based violence, there is a migration or displacement. So during displacement, women paid a lot. There is a high economic crisis and management crisis. This management crisis and economic crisis was affected women rather than a man, because man was the actor of the war, but women the receiver of the war. Without any sin, women paid a lot because she cared about her children, about her family, but so during this whole process, she paid a lot. I wanted to say this kind.
Other questions for UDNA? If there are no questions, I'm just going to raise a point that I noticed from UDNA's presentation is how much statistics hide things. Because 40.9% women, no women with disabilities in the government. 30% women, because Ethiopia is touted as one of the countries who have a lot of women in leadership, but no single woman with disabilities. So statistics really hide things. So I think as women's rights organizations, as women with disability rights organizations, I think we really need to think about how we also do our own statistics which tell a different truth or which expose the lies in general statistics. I will now pass over to Zertehun, who will be making the presentation for SWDA.
Thank you very much, Maureen. Our presentation focuses more on leadership position in Ethiopia, women's leadership position in Ethiopia, which was discussed in the morning. You know, some of it is already said, but if I come through the same thing, please don't be bored with my presentation. So, when we see at the share of representation of women in the parliament in year 1995, it was 2% only. Then in 2010, it increases to 27%. In 2015, the number became 38.8, and in 2021, 41.49%. So this is an achievement for women organizations in general, and for those who are working on women rights issues in particular. At regional level, the representation of women in State Council from 2015 up to 2021 stood at 42%. Regionally, I think, in regional level, it's better, more than the federal level. Ethiopia women with disabilities have not been, as said already, represented in the Parliament Regional State Council. This is so sad, but still we are working on it, and hopefully this number changed in the future, in the near future. According to data in 2020, only 2 political parties, Ethiopian Citizens for Social Justice and Prosperity Party, have a gender policy. No gender policy in parties, in the rest of parties, except the 2. And only 13 parties successfully reached the 20% threshold of registered women candidates to qualify for additional funding. This is not for the sake of women, but to get additional funding for the election. Unless they include women, the funding gets reduced from them. So this also shows how discriminatory our situation in Ethiopia is. With regard to candidates, only 99 among the 9,505 registered candidates are persons with disabilities, representing 0.9%. For the candidate registered by political parties for the House of Representatives. Women played a role including values in their children and families. Oh, no, this, I think I missed some slide here. Women's contribution for peace. At the moment, as maybe you heard about the situation in Ethiopia, there is no peace, there is conflict in almost all parts of the country. And women are the one who mostly affected because of this conflict. Women are the one, their children, and elderly people affected more. So for this, the involvement of women rights organization is very important. So Siiqqee also tried to involve in this. Accordingly, armed conflict decreased worldwide in most countries and regions except Africa. In Africa, you know, the Sudanese case, Ethiopian case, Somali's case, different parts of the country in Ethiopia are suffering from conflict. In Africa, identity, militia activity by ethnicity, religion, land ownership, etc. is on the rise, and it increased the engagement in violence by 46%. Women and children are the most affected during conflict, so that SWDA involved in peacekeeping. You may be heard again about the rape case, violence. Most violence affected most women in the northern part of our country. Still it continues, this conflict continues, and so many women displaced and without any support. Still they are in suffering. Mothers of Peace established, I don't know this. We believe women played a role, including values in their children and families that promote peace and peaceful negotiation. Women are also involved in different customary peace building and conflict resolution process in their communities. For instance, Siiqqee, the name of our organization is taken from this Siiqqee is solidarity among women. It is a peacekeeping mechanism in the rural areas of Ethiopia a long time ago. So this Siiqqee is, at the moment, it started, promotion of Siiqqee started. So as an organization, we call women, elder women, for this peacekeeping. We call them Siiqqees. These Siiqqees need to get training, different trainings, and also elder men, abagadas, also involved in our training, because the peace situation forced us to focus more on women issues at the moment. So different trainings were provided to Siiqqees and abagadas in our program areas. At the 5 districts of AWESOME projects, we tried to capacitate them to involve in peacekeeping. So this is the use of Siiqqee. And again, Mothers of Peace established in 2018. And still they are there. They are selected women from all regions in the country. They traveled to the northern part and tried their best to bring this peace situation, but unable at that moment. But still, women are struggling to bring this peace situation. Recently, we also organized a session that is called Coffee for Peace. We tried with the Mothers of Peace at higher level. Now we go down to the grassroots where women mothers, because they are responsible for their children, for their husband, they have the power to convince their husband and their sons not to involve in conflict situation. So we established a program that Peace for Women, Coffee for Peace. Then women come together, while drinking coffee, they discuss about peace situation in their area. This is one program we are working on. These are the peace mothers I'm talking about. That includes our current president, Sahle-Work. Still, they also are working on these peacekeeping situations as a woman. 14 Ethiopian professional women are trained and are accredited members representing Ethiopia at a network of African women in conflict prevention and mediation. This is also another effort that takes place regarding this peace situation in our country. However, women are often excluded from formal peace negotiation and traditional institution. Of course, they are avoided, but they are trying, they are struggling. No one is going to give them, to call them or try to involve them in peacekeeping situation, negotiation, but by themselves, they are trying to do so. Peace processes are legally dominated by men, as women have less access to and control of power and resources and decision-making power. Women factory workers. As you know, our program staff are here. They can talk more about AWESOME program. Siiqqee focuses on women factory workers. So we have majority of factory workers are women, 80 to 90% of them. my colleagues can explain more about the factory situation, factory workers, women, what we achieved, what we gained from this program after I finish. So I just briefly, to give you an information, an average around 60% of women have migrated from rural regions to work in the manufacturing industry, less education, young, lower pay, you know, because factory owners, they are willing to employ women because they employ them with less pay, and they can, you know, use them as they want, because these women are not educated, well educated. They come to the town or to near the factory areas for survival, just for survival. So they just leave their rights, they cannot talk about their rights. But now, after we involved in this work, many achievements were gained. Companies tend to prefer women over men because they perceived them as more quality oriented, dependable, committed, stable, and obedient to leadership. They know this. The factory owners know all this, but they don't care about the right of the women. So that is why we involved in this program. So in short, there are lots of achievements, but only I focus on the leadership position of the area where we are working. So 19 women took political leadership position in Dukam town. Dukam is one of the area where we involved with our awesome project. So this is an achievement. We have 5 districts. Out of these 5, the 3 got a chance to push women to a leadership position. 20 women took political leadership position in Sabata town, and again in Galan town, 40 women got the success of getting to council position. So this is it. Maybe Galalcha and Fikadu are here. They can talk more about specifically on the success of awesome project. But before I leave, what I want to raise, which is not mentioned here, is, you know, as an opportunity, the factories where we are working these days, they convinced to employ women with disabilities, which was not there before. After this program, many women with disabilities get a chance to be employed there. And the bylaw situation also. The bylaw is there by the male engagement partners that protect women's rights. So these are the achievements we gain. Maybe Galalcha can, please can add more to this presentation. Thank you on my part.
We'll talk when, if there are questions, because we have some other sessions also that we are going to present. So if questions are coming, we can give some other additional points.
Okay. Any questions for Siiqqee?
My question is, I didn't know that the huge percentage of women in parliament had increased only in the last 30 years. So my question is, have you seen, with this big increase of representation of women in parliament, have you seen better laws that are more like gender sensitive? So has there been an improvement for women thanks to this increase in the representation in parliament, or you haven't really seen that? So I'm saying if the increase in representation have improved the laws that Parliament is passing, has improved the lives of women, is that increased representation means that lives of women have improved, basically?
The percentage is increased. I don't think it's because of the new law exists, but the government wants to show that it's inclusive, you know, inclusive. Women are, in fact, people were talking that it's 50-50, which is not true. But the representation is there, not because of the law, but because of the wish of the government.
Yeah, maybe to add some on this, maybe no laws, but government do have different incentives like affirmative action and the like. But recently even, the number of ministers, around 20 ministers were there when the current ruling party came to power in 2018. And that time, 10 minister member was women and 10 was men, almost 50-50. But recently, it is around 33. So it's recently, even after 2018, it was 50-50, now it's decreased. And even this need by itself some assessment why. So the government, there is a motive from the government side to just bring women to power, even to the level of ministries. But still, the problem, the challenge that we have mentioned previously was a problem, I think, to sustain this position of women. Yeah.
Yeah, just to add a point, I've said in the morning session, we don't have binding constitution for the number of women representatives. That just depends on the goodwill of the ruling party. So we don't have any policy that is changed. This is why we are striving to, you know, make that constitutional. If it is constitutional, the number of women, whoever the ruling party, the representation will be there. So now it is only dependent on the Prosperity Party, which is now the leading party. This is why the number of women is now, the leadership position is now fluctuating from where it was, 50%, assumed 50%, but now it is decreasing from time to time. And that is not going even down to the regional and the district level, just at the parliament level.
Okay, thank you. My concern is, you know, at the beginning of the new reform, it is 50-50. But after the formal elections of 2021, it is decreasing from 50 to 41, 38, and 33. You know, there is a merging of state ministers or sector offices. You know, when we are talking thoroughly, you know, the big problem is regarding the representations and the position is, it is, you know, there is no enough budget. It is budgeting, even there is a problem in budgeting. You know, the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, before it is a Ministry of Women and Children alone. Currently, there is a merging with a Ministry of Social and Women's Affairs. It is merging in one department, or it's led by one ministry. But they are not functioning, or they are not working strongly. Even, you know, currently there is a lot of unpaid care work. And I see 119 must be advocated as a Ministry of Women and as a Minister of Women and Social Affairs, but there is no any. Even, you know, I want information from the Ministry of Women and Social Affairs, but about ILO 119, but they don't know, couldn't have full information even. You know, there is merging, but they couldn't have enough budget for this empowerment. You know, the government give a position for our women, but that women, they don't have a power to exercise their position, their authority. It is sometimes it is a symbol.
Thank you. Debabe. Thank you, Zertihun. So we still have one more presentation, but because we're actually we're running behind, but we're running ahead, because a lot of the partners spoke about challenges, which was going to be the next session. So what I'll do is I'll break us for lunch, and then we'll come back and FOWODE will present. But I think the Ethiopia case is a case where there is a lot of instrumentalization of women. So there are women in positions. Ethiopia looks really good to the world, but the truth of the matter is that the women don't have as much power as we perceive from the outside. I was also very happy to hear from Zertihun's presentation. Now I know what Siiqqee means. I know what Siiqqee means, but also the use of traditional systems of resolving peace and how women are involved in that. Because to tell it, you'd not hear the amount of work that women are doing for peace in Ethiopia. Usually they just talk about the national process, and also to tell it, in a lot of the news, they're saying the conflict is finished, so it's really good to hear like the truth of what is happening in Ethiopia, also for AWESOME, so that we can adjust accordingly. Because sometimes when we read the news and we hear the conflict is finished, we expect things to just continue as normal, but that's not the case. So thank you, everyone. I'll give us a break for lunch. We'll be back in an hour, so at 2:10.